coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there, over there, over there. Send the word over.
Hey everybody, this is Joshua Littrell. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast today. Wow, I am so excited to talk to you about Florida's medical cannabis program. It's just yours truly today, but that's okay because the month of December, you all are really going to just be able to focus on me, and we're going to talk about what's happening in the states, what's happening at the federal level, what's happening potentially in the whole entire world from a cannabis standpoint. So today we're going to talk about Florida's medical cannabis program. And I think many of you all are our listeners who are out of the state of Florida too. I can't say thank you enough, just first and foremost, to all of you who have tuned in this year. But the second part of that is all of you who have become patients in the great state of Florida. Now, I'm going to throw a caveat out there that I thought about this long and hard preparing for this show of what I would say. And I'm going to say something that may peeve a few of you off, but also I want you to just sit back and think about it for a moment. I love Florida's medical cannabis program, but I don't want anybody to be confused. Florida's medical cannabis program is a recreational program wrapped in a medical cannabis model. Ooh, those are some dirty words. Yes, I know they are, but it's true. I think all of you know that it's true. This originally started as, a low THC oil like Georgia's program, and Florida has now gone with full flower that's available, which is beautiful. For me, it's about the whole plant. It's about everybody having the access that they should have. But we don't advocate for recreational, even though I think most of you all know who me independently, aside from Veterans for Cannabis, who is Joshua Littrell. And he's a libertarian at heart, and he, wants the government to stay the hell out of our lives. But from Veterans for Cannabis standpoint, we always advocate for medical cannabis access, and we just don't have the conversation about recreational access because it's not our fight. Our fight is for you, the patients, and to make sure that patients have access to medicine. I love Florida's program. Florida's medical cannabis program has been phenomenal for the patients, me included, and it's done some really great things, but it is a recreational program wrapped in a medical model. So what does that mean? I think that means that Florida will have recreational cannabis by the end of 2021, if not early 22. But until we get there, let's really focus on what the numbers look like right now, today, December of 2020. Actually, these numbers are from November, so just remember that. Out of the entire state of Florida, and I think there's 10 or 12 million in the state of Florida, there are 441,499 active ID card holders. Now, out of that, I get it. Those active ones mean the ones who are going to the dispensaries to get the medicine, right? So I'm included in that because I'm not included in that because I have a card, but it's not active anymore. I'm not going there because I don't reside in the state of Florida, unfortunately, anymore. So what does that mean from the state of Florida standpoint? I can tell you all that when I applied, I want to say 6 or 7 months after the program was started, I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. The processing time for their application was about 60 days. It took them about 60 days to issue out licenses. There was only maybe 2 people working in the office at that point in time. The processing time to complete a new patient's application right now, as it sits, 5 business days. That is a huge, huge, loud applause for the state of Florida because, the state of Florida has been really, really proactive in this process. Now, granted, there's still a lot of senators and a lot of representatives. Scratch that. There's not a lot anymore. I think you all know that. There are a few senators and representatives who are fighting against this in Tallahassee at the Capitol. But for the most part, everybody's pretty much embraced it. And it's so comical to me personally when we would sit up there and I would speak as the CEO and founder of Veterans for Cannabis in front of different municipalities, the local city government, the local city council, state governments, things like that. The first thing you would hear is, "We don't want dispensaries in our area," and I'll never forget it, you all, never forget it. I was in, let's just say, Lower Alabama, but it was in North Florida, Northwest Florida, in a very reserved community, a very conservative community. There was a gentleman on their city council that had to have been almost 80 years old. And he was as adamantly against this as I was pro for this. And the most comical thing I've ever heard anybody say was, "I don't care what you say, this kills people." And I like to fell up out my chair, and I was standing up. So the funny thing about that was this gentleman looked straight at me, and he was like, "I don't want these dispensaries here because it's just going to bring in riffraff, and we're going to have a bunch of homeless here and a bunch of dope heads." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, sir, with all due respect, that's been absolutely not the case wherever medical cannabis has come about across this country. You know that, right? I don't care what you say, son. I got a lot more years on you. I got a lot of friends in Colorado that told me this is how bad it is." And I'm like, "Sir, I'm not going to argue with you. You are one of 7 up there. I'm talking to the other 6 of you." So as I spoke, I went through the different, specific data points, how we saw a reduction in teen use, how there's been no increase in, death. Obviously, I think death's been pretty constant at 0 for the last 30 or 40,000 years. And how we haven't seen the numbers go through the roof from car accidents and things like this. And in fact, arrests are down, which is phenomenal because now we're helping to adjust our broken criminal justice system, which is even better for everybody. He didn't want to hear it. But the good thing was, like I said, he was one of 7. The other 6 up there were absolutely on board and voted for this. And it's so warming and heartwarming to me to hear people that maybe aren't necessarily for what we have to say, but they hear what we have to say and what it means from veterans that stand up and speak on behalf of medical cannabis and what it's done to them specifically, the positive impact it's had on their family, and the positive impact it's had on their lives. That changes people. I can tell you all that city council in that Northwest Florida section up there, it was really conservative, but there were a number of them who changed their minds based on what I said that evening. Now, granted, it wasn't just me. There were a couple other people that spoke, and there was another gentleman who I'm so thankful that got up and spoke. He was in his mid-70s, really conservative, absolutely against cannabis, but went to Colorado and was like, "Hey, I'm out here," and he had Parkinson's. And his daughter asked him to try some oil. And he got up, started telling the story how they were sitting around the fire, and he looked over at his daughter, and I'm going to try not to cry as I say this too, because he started crying that night. And his daughter was crying, and she was crying, and he was like, "Honey, what's wrong?" And she said, "Dad," he was sitting there with his hands kind of in between his legs, just leaned forward on the fire. She said, "Dad, your hand isn't shaking." And he looked down, and his hand wasn't trembling because the Parkinson's made him tremble tremendously bad. And it was very noticeable all the time. He said that changed him forever. And hearing that from my standpoint, yes, I've heard the different, positive benefits. I've seen what it does in my life, but just hearing it from somebody who was ultra conservative, that was late in life, that had all this different life experience and had been absolutely adamantly against cannabis, to hear him change his stance and to advocate for what we were doing, that's big. That's why we do this. That's why right now in the state of Florida, there are 441,000 patients, 441,499, almost 441,500. That would be crazy. It's probably already past that at this point in time. But the big part of that is the processing time for ID card printing too. once again, I go back to when I originally got mine. I think it took them a little over a month to get my card out to me after it was approved. So that was like a 90-day period, which was crazy. But now the processing time for ID cards is 5 business days. That's really, really, really awesome. The biggest part about it, what makes this program what it is, and we could not be where we're at with the medical cannabis program in Florida, first and foremost, without you all, the patients. So thank you. But secondly, the qualified physicians. Right now, there are almost 2,700 qualified physicians in the state of Florida that are writing recommendations for medical cannabis. 2,700. That is so phenomenal. When just a year ago, there was, I don't even think it was 2,000 yet. So, and I'll never forget, after the first year, there were only like 240. Now, granted, I still think that there are, the majority of the recommendations are being written by a very few of the population. But just knowing there's almost 2,700 qualified physicians right now in the state of Florida is so heartwarming, and it just makes it worth talking about. Because I think the key is everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about what medical cannabis means in the state of Florida. But they're also talking about how, wow, there's a dispensary down the street from my house. It's so nice to have that access so close. Or, holy cow, they deliver. They bring the medicine right out to me at my house. I don't even have to go out. I think one of the biggest things that's made Florida's program so enjoyable from a patient standpoint is the fact that they were so quick with the home delivery. Some states actually don't allow home delivery, and it's really frustrating because there are so many patients who don't want to go into a dispensary and have an experience with a representative from the company. They don't want to be seen in a dispensary, blah, 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 whatever it may be. But the biggest part about that is there are many veterans who actually can't go in there, who don't want to get out of their house, who need to get the medicine first before they can get better to start going out to the dispensaries, but they can't get the medicine because their state doesn't allow for delivery. That's really, really, really frustrating from my standpoint. I can't tell you all how many veterans contact us on a daily basis and talk about how, hey, what can I do to fight for delivery in my state? Well, the only thing I tell them is, what do we always say on this podcast? And, hey, thank you all for joining us here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Littrell. What do I always tell you all? It's a call to action, right? So if you're sending us an email or a phone call, whatever it may be, carrier pigeon, and you're asking how do you get the changes done that you need to get done, that's the first step, right? That's the first step. But then you've got to follow through. It's that call to action that makes the difference. You've got to get actively involved in your community, with your friends, with your family. You have to start having those conversations to basically force the change that we need to make. Now, granted, I've learned through this process over the last 5-6 years as becoming an advocate that, nothing's going to get done because they want to help veterans out. Nothing's going to get done because they want to help kids out. People get things done because people continue to pester and pressure them to get it done. And a lot of times it's from a financial standpoint. There's no doubt about it. And I know a lot of us aren't in the position to be able to financially put any pressure on any elected officials, or that pressure comes with a donation. Yeah, so what? We can't do that. But guess what you can do? You can absolutely pressure them with phone calls and emails and blah, 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 blah. You lay fire down, and they have to duck. And at some point in time, they're going to have to come up. Well, guess what? When they come up, you hit them with the strongness. You hit them with, this is why. Let's go do it. That's how we make things happen. So Florida's medical cannabis program, as I alluded to earlier, we've wrapped it all up together now. It is wrapped in it's a recreational program wrapped in a medical outfit, right? But I don't really care, to be honest with you. As long as the patients are getting the medicine, as long as you, the listener, has access to the medicine that you need, that's all that matters to me personally. That's all that matters to us at Veterans for Cannabis, is that our veterans have access to the medicine.